This is the official audiobook of the book. To access the ebook version, the link will be in the first pinned comment just below. Click and access. I invite you to pause for a moment and imagine a butterfly. Not just any butterfly, but one that has traveled thousands of miles across continents, crossing vast oceans with wings so delicate they seem almost transparent in the morning light. Have you ever wondered how such a fragile creature accomplishes what seems impossible? The answer lies in a secret that has been hiding in plain sight for millennia. The butterfly never forces its flight. As I watch the morning mist rise from the valley below my dwelling, I am reminded daily of this profound truth. The butterfly doesn't strain against the wind, it dances with it. It doesn't exhaust itself fighting air currents, it reads them, joins them, becomes one with them. In this effortless partnership with natural forces, it achieves what no amount of muscular struggle could ever accomplish. This is your first glimpse into what I call the revolution of silence, the transformation that happens not through the noise of endless trying, but through the profound wisdom of aligned action. You see, my friend, we live in a world that has forgotten one of life's most essential truths. The greatest achievements in human history have never come from brute force alone, but from harmony with the invisible currents that move through all existence. Think of the inventors whose breakthrough discoveries came not during intense brainstorming sessions, but in moments of quiet contemplation, while walking, bathing, or simply allowing their minds to rest. Consider the artists whose masterpieces flowed through them when they stopped trying to create and started allowing creation to move through them. Remember the leaders who changed the world not by forcing their will upon others, but by embodying a truth so authentic that others were naturally drawn to follow. This is what I want to share with you, the difference between surrender born of weakness and surrender born of wisdom. The first is collapse, the second is mastery. The first comes from having no strength left to fight, the second comes from recognizing that there is a far more elegant way to achieve what your heart truly desires. I have spent lifetimes studying what the ancient sages called Wu Wei, the art of actionless action, the power of non-doing. This is not passivity, my friend, nor is it some mystical concept reserved for mountain hermits. Wu Wei is the most practical wisdom you will ever encounter because it teaches you to work with the fundamental grain of reality rather than against it. Imagine spending years pushing against a door that says pull. You exhaust yourself, develop calluses, maybe even injure your shoulder, all while the door remains stubbornly closed. Wu Wei is the moment you finally notice the simple sign and realize that a gentle pull will open what all your pushing could not budge. The door was never resisting you, you were simply approaching it in a way that made opening impossible. This is what I offer you in the pages ahead, the ability to recognize which doors in your life need pulling rather than pushing, which dreams require spaciousness rather than grasping, which relationships flourish through presence rather than control. Your journey toward this revolutionary understanding begins with a single recognition: you are tired. Not just physically tired, though that may be true too, but soul tired from constantly swimming against life's current. You have been conditioned to believe that wanting something means you must chase it, that achieving goals requires clenching your fists around them, that success demands sacrificing your peace. But what if the opposite were true? What if your desperate grip has been preventing exactly what you're trying to attract? What if your relentless effort has been creating the very resistance you're struggling against? As we embark on this exploration together, you will discover how to distinguish between the effort that creates and the effort that destroys. You will learn to recognize the difference between intention, which gives direction to your life like a river's banks give direction to water, and control, which tries to micromanage every molecule of that flowing water. Through ancient wisdom made immediately practical for modern life, you will explore how relationships transform when you stop trying to change others and instead change the space you create around them. You will see how career success multiplies when you stop forcing opportunities and start positioning yourself where opportunities naturally flow. You will experience how creativity explodes when you create fertile emptiness rather than demanding immediate results. The path ahead is structured as a gentle awakening, beginning with recognizing your patterns of struggle and resistance, then learning the foundational principles that govern natural success, followed by specific applications to every area of your life that matters most. You will walk through real stories of people who transformed their marriages, careers, creative blocks, and life purpose not by trying harder, but by learning when and how to try differently, or sometimes, courageously, when not to try at all. Take a moment now to feel what I call the first breath of relief. Close your eyes if you feel comfortable doing so. Allow your breathing to slow and deepen naturally, without forcing it. Notice how your body already knows how to breathe without your conscious control, how your heart beats without your management, how cuts heal and food digests without your micromanagement. This is your first taste of Wu Wei, the recognition that life is already flowing through you with an intelligence far greater than your worried mind. Rest here for just a moment, feeling the profound relief of not having to control everything, of not having to figure everything out right now, of not having to force your next breath. Let this moment be your first step into a way of living that honors both your deepest desires and your natural rhythms. The butterfly's journey of 1,000 miles begins with this same trust, not in its own strength alone, but in the invisible forces that carry those who know how to surrender to their support. What would your life look like if you could achieve your most important goals while feeling as effortless as that butterfly crossing oceans? What would change if you discovered that stopping your struggle didn't mean stopping your progress, but actually accelerating it in ways your forcing mind never imagined possible? These are not rhetorical questions, my friend. They are invitations into a reality that awaits your exploration, a way of being that thousands have discovered before you, and that you too can embody, starting with this very next breath. Reflection moments. What areas of your life feel like you're pushing on a pull door? Where do you notice the most exhaustion from forcing outcomes? What would it feel like to approach just one challenge today with the curiosity of the butterfly rather than the struggle of swimming upstream? Practice. For the next 24 hours, whenever you notice yourself straining or forcing something, pause and ask, is there a more effortless way to approach this? Don't change anything yet, simply notice and be gently curious about alternatives. The exhausted warrior, recognizing your struggles. I want you to close your eyes for a moment and feel the weight you carry. Not the physical weight of your backpack or purse, but that invisible burden that settles on your shoulders each morning before you even step out of bed. It's the weight of constant effort, of swimming upstream against an endless current, of pushing doors that seem designed to remain closed no matter how hard you lean against them. You are what I call the exhausted warrior, and if you've picked up this book, you know exactly what I mean. You are someone who has been fighting valiantly against life itself, believing that more force, more intensity, more sheer willpower will eventually bend reality to your desires. You wake each day armed with to-do lists, strategies, and a fierce determination to make things happen. Yet despite your heroic efforts, you often find yourself more frustrated, more tired, and somehow further from the peace and fulfillment you seek. I see you there, scrolling through your phone at midnight, planning tomorrow's battles. I feel your exhaustion as you collapse into bed, mentally rehearsing conversations you need to have, problems you need to solve, obstacles you need to overcome. Your mind races like a hamster on a wheel, spinning endlessly but arriving nowhere new. This is the modern condition. We have become warriors in a war that doesn't need to be fought. Our culture has whispered a seductive lie into your ear since childhood, that success belongs to those who try hardest, push longest, and never give up. We've been conditioned to believe that struggle is noble, that ease is suspicious, and that anything worth having must be wrestled from the unwilling hands of an indifferent universe. This is what I call the more effort syndrome, the deeply ingrained belief that more intensity always generates better results. But look around you. When did you last see a tree strain to grow its leaves? Have you ever witnessed a river force its way to the ocean? Does the morning sun grunt with effort as it rises, or does it simply follow its natural path across the sky? Somewhere in our evolution from natural beings to modern strivers, we forgot a fundamental truth. We are the only creatures on Earth who consistently work against the natural flow of existence. The cost of this resistance runs deeper than you might imagine. Yes, there's the obvious exhaustion, the bone-deep fatigue that no amount of coffee can cure, the tension headaches that have become your constant companions, the sleep that never quite refreshes because your nervous system forgot how to truly rest. But the invisible costs cut even deeper. There's the emotional toll of constant disappointment when your Herculean efforts yield mediocre results. There's the spiritual emptiness that creeps in when you realize that even your successes feel hollow because they came at such a high price. There's the growing disconnection from your own intuition, that gentle inner voice that gets drowned out by the clamor of your strategic mind. I've watched countless people achieve everything they thought they wanted, the corner office, the perfect relationship, the six-figure income, only to sit in my presence and whisper, "Is this all there is?" They succeeded according to every external metric, but their victories felt like defeats because they had to abandon their true nature to claim them. Success had become a prison, and they were both the guard and the prisoner. Perhaps most tragic of all is how we've learned to ignore the subtle guidance that life offers us in every moment. Your body sends you signals about what nourishes and what depletes you, but you've trained yourself to override these messages with willpower and caffeine. Your heart whispers about the relationships and experiences that would truly fulfill you, but you've become so focused on what you think you should want that you can barely hear what you actually desire. Life is constantly offering you opportunities, connections, and solutions, but they rarely arrive in the form your controlling mind expects. So you miss them. You walk past open doors while banging your fists against walls, convinced that the walls are where the doors should be. I remember speaking with a successful businessman who told me, "I feel like I'm constantly swimming against a riptide. I'm a strong swimmer, so I haven't drowned, but I'm exhausted, and I don't seem to be getting closer to shore." This is the perfect metaphor for modern life. We've forgotten that when caught in a riptide, the wise swimmer doesn't fight the current directly but swims parallel to the shore until the current releases its hold. You have been swimming against the current of existence itself, and no amount of strength training will solve this problem. What you need is not more muscle, but a different relationship with the water. Take a moment now to feel into your own life. Where are you pushing when you could be flowing? Where are you forcing when you could be allowing? Where are you trying to control outcomes that want to unfold naturally? Feel the tension in your jaw as you clench against uncertainty. Notice how your breathing becomes shallow when you think about all the things you need to make happen. This tension isn't just a side effect of your efforts, it's a signal. Your body, in its ancient wisdom, is trying to tell you something important. You're working against the grain of life instead of with it. Every moment of struggle is a gentle invitation to try a different approach, but we've been taught to interpret struggle as a sign that we need to try harder, not differently. Beneath all this striving, I sense something else in you, a secret hunger for what I call fluidity. Deep in your bones, you remember what it feels like to be in flow, those magical moments when actions arise naturally, when the right words come without forcing, when solutions appear without struggle. You remember being a child and having experiences unfold effortlessly, before you learned that life was supposed to be hard. This hunger for fluidity isn't nostalgia for childhood, it's your soul remembering its true nature. You are meant to live like a river, not like a battering ram. You are designed to move through life with the grace of wind through leaves, not the violence of a storm against the house. The irony is profound. In your efforts to control life, you've lost control of your own peace. In your attempts to force outcomes, you've become powerless to enjoy the journey. In your determination to make things happen, you've forgotten how to let the right things happen through you. But here's what I want you to know, what I want you to feel in the deepest part of your being: there is another way. There is a path that leads to your desires not through the battlefield of struggle, but through the gentle valley of allowing. There is an ancient art that can transform your relationship with effort itself, making you more effective while feeling more at ease. Feel your shoulders as you read these words. Are they creeping toward your ears? Let them drop. Take a breath that reaches all the way down to your belly. For just this moment, you don't have to figure anything out. You don't have to solve any problems or make any decisions. You can simply be here, reading, breathing, allowing yourself to imagine that perhaps there's a way to get what you truly want without going to war with reality. What if I told you that your deepest desires aren't hiding behind locked doors that need to be forced open, but are waiting in gardens that need only your gentle presence to bloom? What if the very effort you've been making is creating the resistance you've been fighting against? In the pages that follow, we'll explore together this different way of moving through the world. Not the way of the exhausted warrior, but the way of the wise gardener who knows that seeds grow not through force, but through the right conditions of soil, water, and light. Moments for reflection. Pause here and ask yourself, what area of my life feels most like swimming against a current? Where am I using the most effort for the least satisfying results? What would it feel like to stop pushing, even for just 5 minutes, in one specific situation I'm currently trying to control? Practice. Before you continue reading, I invite you to try this simple exercise. Choose something small you've been trying to make happen, perhaps a conversation you need to have, a decision you need to make, or a problem you need to solve. For the next 24 hours, imagine that you're a scientist studying this situation with gentle curiosity instead of a warrior trying to conquer it. Simply observe without acting, and notice what information or opportunities present themselves when you're not pushing. This isn't giving up, it's gathering intelligence from a state of openness rather than force. Fundaments. Take a moment. Feel the weight of this book in your hands, or the gentle vibration of these words reaching your ears. Notice how you arrived here, perhaps through countless searches, recommendations, or that inexplicable pull towards something your soul recognized before your mind could name it. This is not coincidence. Like water finding its way to the sea, you have found your way to these ancient truths that are somehow newer and more relevant today than ever before. I want to share something with you that happened over 25 centuries ago, something so simple yet so revolutionary that it continues to transform lives today. Picture, if you will, the rolling hills of ancient China, where mist clings to mountain peaks like whispered secrets, and rivers carve their patient paths through stone without ever declaring war on the landscape. In this timeless setting lived a man whose name you may recognize, Lao Tzu. But forget what you think you know about ancient philosophers. This wasn't a man lost in abstract theories or disconnected from the raw reality of human struggle. He was someone who watched the world with the eyes of a child and the wisdom of eternity, someone who noticed what the rest of us had forgotten how to see. What he observed was this: everything in nature accomplishes its purpose without force, without struggle, without the kind of exhausting effort that we modern humans have made into a religion. The mighty oak grows toward the sky without strain. Rivers carve canyons without anger. Seasons change without resistance to what came before. And yet, we humans, blessed with consciousness and cursed with the illusion of control, had somehow decided to live in opposition to these natural laws. From these observations emerged what we now call the Tao Te Ching, a collection of verses so deceptively simple that they can be read in an hour, yet so profoundly practical that they can guide a lifetime. At the heart of these teachings lies a concept that sounds almost like a riddle, Wu Wei, which translates literally as non-doing or not forcing. But here's where I need you to pause with me, because Wu Wei is perhaps the most misunderstood concept in all of Eastern philosophy. It's not about becoming passive. It's not about giving up or becoming lazy. It's not about avoiding responsibility or letting life happen to you. Wu Wei is something far more sophisticated, far more powerful, and infinitely more practical than any of these common misconceptions. Think of a master musician playing a complex piece. Watch their hands move across the instrument. There's no visible strain, no fighting with the keys or strings, yet the most intricate melodies emerge. This is Wu Wei in action. The musician has developed such deep skill, such profound alignment with their instrument, that effort becomes effortless, and complexity flows with the simplicity of breathing. Or consider a skilled surfer riding a massive wave. They're not conquering the ocean or forcing the water to obey their will. Instead, they've learned to read the patterns, to align themselves with forces far greater than themselves, and in doing so, they accomplish something that no amount of strength alone could achieve. They've learned to partner with power rather than fight against it. This is the essence of Wu Wei, not the absence of action, but action in harmony with the natural flow of life. It's what happens when we stop swimming against the current and discover that the river was always flowing toward exactly where we needed to go. But to understand Wu Wei, we must first understand the Tao itself. Imagine trying to explain the ocean to someone who has never seen water. How would you begin? The Tao presents us with a similar challenge, because it refers to something so fundamental, so all-encompassing, that our ordinary language struggles to contain it. The word Tao literally means the way or the path, but it points towards something much vaster than any road you could walk. The Tao is the underlying principle that gives rise to everything, the invisible force that keeps planets in their orbits, that guides seeds to become flowers, that orchestrates the incredibly complex dance of trillions of cells in your body right now without any conscious effort on your part. Think of the Tao as the deepest current in existence, the river beneath all rivers. It's not something separate from you that you need to find or attain. You're already swimming in it. You're made of it. Every breath you take, every beat of your heart, every thought that passes through your awareness is an expression of this deeper intelligence that flows through all things. But here's what makes this relevant to your daily struggles with work, relationships, and the endless challenge of being human in a complex world. This same intelligence that grows your hair and heals your cuts and knows exactly when to release autumn leaves from their branches is also available to guide your decisions, your relationships, and your creative expressions. The Tao is like a cosmic GPS system that's always broadcasting the optimal route, but we've forgotten how to tune into the signal. We've become so focused on forcing our way through life using sheer willpower that we've lost touch with this deeper guidance system that could make everything flow more smoothly. Now, you might wonder, if this intelligence is always available, why doesn't everyone live in harmony with it? This brings us to one of the most practical aspects of Taoist wisdom, the understanding of yin and yang, not as abstract symbols, but as the breathing rhythm of existence itself. Look at your own hand right now. Notice how it naturally alternates between tension and relaxation, opening and closing. Your heart follows the same pattern, contraction and expansion, systole and diastole, in perfect rhythm without any conscious management from you. Your lungs breathe in and breathe out. Even your thoughts arise and dissolve in natural cycles. Yin and yang represent this fundamental rhythm that governs everything, the dance between receptivity and action, rest and movement, planning and executing, listening and speaking. In traditional imagery, yin is often associated with the feminine principle, receptive, intuitive, nurturing, flowing. Yang represents the masculine principle, active, focused, directing, achieving. But here's what's crucial for your practical life: both energies exist within everyone, and both are necessary for any endeavor to succeed. The problem in our achievement-obsessed culture is that we've become addicted to pure yang energy, constant doing, forcing, pushing, controlling, while treating yin energy as weakness or laziness. This imbalance is like trying to breathe only inhalations without ever exhaling, or like attempting to make music using only loud notes with no silence between them. The result is not strength but exhaustion, not progress but burnout, not success but a hollow victory that leaves you wondering why you feel so empty despite your accomplishments. I've seen this pattern countless times: the entrepreneur who works 18-hour days but can't understand why their business feels stuck, the parent who micromanages every aspect of their child's life but wonders why the relationship feels strained, the perfectionist who forces themselves through endless self-improvement routines but never feels good enough. What all of these scenarios lack is the wisdom of timing, the understanding that there are seasons in all things. There are times for planting and times for harvesting, times for speaking and times for listening, times for effort and times for allowing. Wu Wei emerges naturally when we learn to recognize these rhythms and align our actions accordingly. Let me share a distinction that changed everything for me, and I believe it will transform your approach to every challenge you face: the difference between intention and control. These two might seem similar, but they operate from completely different energies and produce dramatically different results. Intention is yang energy at its most refined. It's the clear, focused decision about what you want to create or experience. When you set an intention, you're like an archer drawing back the bowstring, gathering energy, taking aim, preparing for release. Intention provides direction and momentum. It says yes to what serves your highest good and no to what doesn't align with your deepest values. Control, on the other hand, is yang energy that has become distorted by fear. Control tries to manipulate every variable, manage every outcome, and eliminate all uncertainty from the path. Control is like an archer who not only draws the bow but then tries to follow the arrow in flight, adjusting its course mid-air, dictating exactly which blade of grass it should pass over on its way to the target. Here's what I've learned: intention sets things in motion, but control chokes off the very flow it's trying to direct. When you set a clear intention and then release it with trust, this is Wu Wei. You're partnering with the intelligence of the universe rather than trying to substitute your limited perspective for infinite wisdom. Think about the last time you had a really important conversation with someone you care about. If you went into that conversation with control energy, planning exactly what they should say, how they should respond, what conclusions they should reach, how did it go? My guess is that it felt forced, artificial, maybe even manipulative, regardless of your good intentions. Now think about a conversation that felt truly meaningful, where a real connection happened. I'll bet you went in with clear intention, perhaps to understand their perspective, to share something important, or to resolve a conflict, but you remained open to discoveries you hadn't anticipated. You listened for what wanted to emerge between you rather than pushing for predetermined outcomes. This brings us to another foundational principle that makes Wu Wei practical rather than mystical, the concept of Te, which is often translated as virtue, but not virtue in the moralistic sense we might expect. Te refers to the natural power that emerges when someone is aligned with their authentic nature and with the Tao itself. Imagine meeting someone who never tries to impress you but somehow leaves you feeling inspired. Someone who doesn't demand attention but naturally draws people toward them. Someone who doesn't force their opinions on others but influences through the quality of their presence. This is Te in action, not power over others, but power with life itself. Te is what happens when your actions arise from your deepest authenticity rather than from ego or manipulation. It's the charisma of someone who has nothing to prove and nothing to hide. It's the influence that comes not from techniques or strategies but from genuine care and wisdom. The most practical way I've found to understand Te is through the metaphor that Lao Tzu used repeatedly: water. Water is the softest, most yielding element, yet it can carve through solid rock. Water never fights with obstacles, it finds ways around, over, under, or through them. It always seeks the lowest places that others avoid, yet it's essential for all life. Water teaches us that true power doesn't announce itself with noise and force. Instead, it flows with such persistence, such adaptive intelligence, that it inevitably reaches its destination and often transforms everything it touches along the way. This is the kind of power that becomes available when we align ourselves with Wu Wei rather than against it. But let me be completely honest with you about what this journey requires, because I want you to have realistic expectations. Learning to live in harmony with these principles isn't like learning a new technique or strategy that you can apply once and then move on. It's more like learning to play a musical instrument or developing your physical fitness. It's a practice that deepens over time, with layers of subtlety that continue to reveal themselves. The reason it takes time is that Wu Wei asks us to unlearn some of our most deeply conditioned responses to life. From childhood, most of us were taught that more effort always produces better results, that we must force doors open, that if something isn't working we should try harder. These beliefs are so fundamental to our worldview that questioning them can initially feel disorienting. I remember the first time someone suggested that my problems might be getting worse because I was trying too hard to solve them, not because I wasn't trying hard enough. My mind rejected this idea completely. It seemed like giving up, like spiritual bypassing, like an excuse for laziness. It took months of gentle experimentation before I began to glimpse what they were pointing toward. What I discovered was that there's a quality of effort that enhances flow and a quality of effort that disrupts it. Think about learning to ride a bicycle. In the beginning, you probably grip the handlebars with white knuckles, muscles tense with concentration. But as you developed skill, you learned to hold the handlebars firmly enough to steer but lightly enough to feel the bike's natural balance. Too loose, and you lose control. Too tight, and you prevent the subtle adjustments that keep you upright. This is the kind of discernment that Wu Wei develops, learning the difference between helpful effort and counterproductive force, between appropriate action and anxious doing, between healthy boundaries and rigid control. As we begin to apply these principles to the specific areas of your life, your relationships, career, creativity, and daily challenges, I want you to approach them as experiments rather than rules. The Tao that can be perfectly systematized is not the eternal Tao. What works beautifully in one situation might be completely inappropriate in another. Wu Wei is ultimately about developing sensitivity to what each moment requires rather than applying formulas. Right now, as you absorb these foundational concepts, I invite you to notice what's happening in your body. Are you trying to memorize everything? Are you efforting to understand? Or can you let these ideas wash over you like water, trusting that what's meant to be absorbed will find its way into your awareness naturally? This gentle allowing is itself a first taste of Wu Wei, receiving information without grasping for it, learning without strain, opening to possibility without demanding certainty. Pause here and reflect. What would change in your life if you trusted that your deepest intentions were already in harmony with the flow of existence? Where have you been swimming against currents that might actually be carrying you toward exactly where you need to go? What would it feel like to partner with life's intelligence rather than constantly trying to override it? Consider this. Think of one area where you've been applying force, perhaps a relationship you're trying to fix, a goal you're straining to achieve, or a personal change you're demanding of yourself. What might happen if you brought the same level of care and commitment to this area, but with the yielding persistence of water rather than the rigid insistence of stone? Notice, over the next few days, pay attention to moments when things flow easily versus moments when you encounter resistance. Begin to sense the difference between aligned action and forced action, not to judge either one, but simply to develop sensitivity to these different energies. Today's practice: choose one small daily activity, perhaps washing dishes, walking to your car, or having your morning coffee. Approach this simple task as an opportunity to experiment with Wu Wei. Move a little slower than usual. Notice the difference between doing and allowing doing to happen through you. Feel the subtle shift when you stop forcing the action and start dancing with it. This is how transformation begins, not with dramatic overhauls, but with tiny experiments in allowing life to be a partnership rather than a battle. As we move forward together, each principle will build upon this foundation, showing you how to bring this ancient wisdom into the most practical and pressing areas of your modern life. The river of the Tao is already flowing. The question is not how to create the current, but how to recognize it, trust it, and allow it to carry you toward the fulfillment that has been waiting for you all along. Key principles applied to daily life. There is a moment in every morning when I watch the world wake up around me, and I'm reminded of something profound. The sun doesn't struggle to rise, the flowers don't force themselves to bloom, and the rivers don't strain to reach the sea. Yet we humans have somehow convinced ourselves that life requires constant battle, that success demands we push against everything with clenched fists and rigid determination. Today, I want to walk with you through the gentle territories of your daily life, your relationships, your work, your dreams of abundance, your creative spirit, your body's wisdom, and perhaps your children's growth. In each of these sacred spaces, there exists a doorway to Wu Wei, a possibility to transform struggle into flow, resistance into harmony. As we explore together, you might find yourself thinking, but surely some things require force? Surely I must fight for what matters. And yes, my friend, there will be times for clear action, for decisive movement. But even then, you'll discover that the most powerful action emerges not from strain, but from alignment, like an arrow released not through muscular tension, but through the bow's perfect surrender to its purpose. Relationships, the end of emotional wars. I have watched countless souls exhaust themselves trying to change the people they love. They push and pull, argue and plead, manipulate and control, all in the name of caring. Yet what I see happening is something far different from love. It's a kind of emotional war where everyone loses, where connection withers under the weight of constant correction. In my years of observing human hearts, I've noticed that the people who draw others toward growth, who inspire transformation without demanding it, carry a different quality in their presence. They have learned what I call the art of loving without grasping. Consider Maria, a woman who came to understand this after nearly losing her marriage of 15 years. She had spent over a decade trying to help her husband become the man he could be, more organized, more emotionally expressive, more ambitious. Every conversation became a subtle, or not so subtle, improvement project. She scheduled his doctor's appointments, critiqued his career choices, and corrected his parenting style. All from love, she told herself. All to help him become better. But what happened instead was a slow death of intimacy. Her husband began to withdraw, spending longer hours at work, shorter conversations at home. He felt criticized in his own sanctuary, judged by the very person whose acceptance he craved most. Maria felt frustrated and unappreciated, pouring energy into changes that never seemed to stick. The transformation began when Maria learned to practice what I call loving presence without agenda. Instead of seeing her husband as a project to complete, she began seeing him as a river with its own course, its own timing, its own wisdom. This didn't mean becoming passive or accepting harmful behavior, it meant releasing the exhausting role of being his personal life coach. She started asking herself different questions. How can I love him as he is right now? What would it feel like to trust his journey? How might I focus this energy on my own growth instead? The changes were subtle at first, like morning light gradually warming a room. Instead of suggesting improvements, she began expressing genuine appreciation for who he already was. Instead of managing his schedule, she focused on managing her own life with more creativity and purpose. Instead of analyzing his choices, she practiced simply witnessing with compassion. What happened next illustrates the mysterious power of Wu Wei in relationships. Without the pressure of constant improvement, her husband began to relax. In that relaxation, he naturally started making some of the very changes Maria had been pushing for, but now they came from his own authentic desire for growth, not from compliance or resistance to her suggestions. More importantly, their connection deepened. Conversations became explorations rather than evaluations. Physical intimacy returned as emotional intimacy was reborn. They rediscovered the friendship that had been buried under years of improvement projects. This principle extends beyond romantic partnerships into every relationship territory. With friends, it means offering presence instead of advice unless specifically requested. With parents, it might mean accepting their limitations rather than trying to heal their childhood wounds for them. With siblings, it could mean releasing old roles and patterns, allowing each person to be who they are now rather than who they were 20 years ago. The practice here is delicate, like learning to hold water in your cupped hands. Hold too loosely and you lose connection, hold too tightly and you crush what you're trying to preserve. Wu Wei in relationships means finding that perfect middle way, caring deeply while holding lightly. Take a moment now to consider one relationship in your life where you might be pushing too hard, where you've been trying to change someone rather than accepting them. Notice what it feels like in your body when you imagine releasing that agenda. What becomes possible when you love without the exhausting job of improvement? Sometimes people worry that accepting others means enabling harmful behavior or giving up healthy boundaries. But Wu Wei is not about becoming a doormat, it's about responding from clarity rather than reactivity. When you stop trying to control others, you often find more energy and wisdom available for protecting your own well-being and communicating your needs clearly. The exercise I offer you is this: for 1 week, practice loving one important person in your life exactly as they are. Notice your impulses to fix, improve, or change them, and instead breathe into accepting their current journey. Watch what shifts, both in them and in you. Career, success without sacrificing the soul. In the realm of work and career, our culture has created perhaps its most elaborate mythology around the necessity of struggle. We speak of grinding, hustling, crushing it, and killing it, language that reveals how we've learned to approach our professional lives like battles to be won rather than gardens to be tended. I want to share with you a different possibility, one where professional success flows not from forcing and controlling, but from alignment and natural action. This isn't about becoming passive in your career or abandoning ambition. It's about discovering a way of working that nourishes rather than depletes, that builds rather than burns. Consider David, a software engineer who was slowly suffocating in his approach to career advancement. He worked 70-hour weeks, said yes to every project, and tried to control every variable in his professional environment. He micromanaged his team, obsessed over office politics, and spent enormous energy trying to anticipate and manipulate his boss's decisions. On the surface, this strategy seemed logical. More hours should equal more results. More control should equal more security. More political maneuvering should equal more advancement. But what David discovered instead was a spiral of diminishing returns. His longer hours produced lower quality work due to mental fatigue. His attempts to control others created resistance and resentment. His political calculations became so complex that he lost touch with simple, authentic relationships with colleagues. David's transformation began when he learned to distinguish between what I call efforting and effective action. Efforting is activity driven by anxiety, control, and force. It's busy but not necessarily productive. Effective action, on the other hand, emerges from clarity, alignment, and natural timing. It appears effortless but achieves powerful results. He started by practicing what I call strategic not doing. Instead of saying yes to every request, he learned to pause and ask, does this align with my deeper purpose and natural strengths? Instead of working longer hours, he focused on working during his natural energy peaks and resting during his natural lows. Instead of trying to control his team through constant oversight, he set clear intentions and then created space for others to contribute their own wisdom and creativity. The results were remarkable. David's work quality improved dramatically when he was no longer spreading his attention across dozens of conflicting priorities. His team became more innovative and engaged when they felt trusted rather than micromanaged. His relationship with his boss shifted from anxiety-driven performance to authentic collaboration. Most surprisingly, opportunities began appearing that he hadn't forced or manipulated into existence. A promotion opened up at exactly the moment he had been considering looking elsewhere. A project he had released attachment to suddenly received full funding. Colleagues began approaching him for advice and collaboration, drawn by his centered energy rather than his aggressive networking. This is Wu Wei in the professional realm, working with full engagement but without desperate attachment to specific outcomes. It's preparing thoroughly for the presentation while remaining unattached to whether it gets approved. It's setting clear boundaries around your time and energy while staying open to unexpected opportunities. It's leading others through inspiration and example rather than control and manipulation. In practical terms, this might look like focusing on the quality of your contribution rather than obsessing over recognition. It might mean having honest conversations about workload instead of suffering in silence while resenting others. It could involve trusting your natural rhythms instead of forcing productivity during low-energy periods. The key insight is that most workplace stress comes not from the work itself, but from our resistance to natural cycles and our attempts to control factors beyond our influence. When you align with your natural strengths, honor your energy rhythms, and focus on what's truly within your control, work becomes a form of meditation rather than a source of depletion. Reflect for a moment on your current approach to work. Where are you pushing against natural flows? Where are you trying to control outcomes that aren't fully within your power? What would it feel like to bring the same energy to your career that a master gardener brings to tending plants, attentive, caring, but trusting in natural processes? The practice I offer you here is to identify one area of your work life where you've been forcing or controlling, and experiment with releasing that grip while maintaining clear intention. Perhaps it's stopping the habit of checking emails late at night, trusting that urgent matters will still be urgent in the morning. Maybe it's delegating a project completely instead of micromanaging every detail. Or it could be having an honest conversation about your workload instead of silently martyring yourself while expecting others to notice and appreciate your sacrifice. Finances, abundance through non-grasping. Money carries such charged energy in our culture, wrapped in layers of fear, desire, shame, and desperate hope. We've been taught that financial security requires vigilant worry, that abundance demands aggressive pursuit, that prosperity flows only to those who grasp and hoard and scheme. Yet when I observe the natural world, I see a different model entirely, one of circulation, abundance, and trust in natural cycles. The ocean doesn't hoard its water, yet it never runs dry. The fruit tree doesn't clutch its harvest, yet it produces year after year. The earth doesn't charge rent for the sunlight, yet all life is sustained. There is a profound teaching here about the relationship between giving, receiving, and the natural flow of abundance. I want to explore with you what I call financial Wu Wei, an approach to money that honors both practical wisdom and spiritual principles, that creates material security without sacrificing inner peace. Consider Sarah, a marketing consultant who had spent years in what she called financial panic mode. She obsessed over every expense, checked her bank balance multiple times daily, and made most decisions from scarcity consciousness. Ironically, this approach kept her trapped in cycles of feast and famine. When money was scarce, she would accept any client out of desperation, often working with people who drained her energy and paid poorly. When money flowed in, she would spend it quickly, driven by a subconscious fear that it wouldn't last. Sarah's transformation began when she learned to distinguish between financial responsibility and financial obsession. Responsibility involves clear awareness of income and expenses, thoughtful planning, and wise choices. Obsession involves constant worry, desperate energy around money decisions, and making life choices primarily from fear of financial insecurity. She started practicing what I call conscious non-attachment with money. This didn't mean becoming careless or impractical, it meant holding her financial goals lightly while taking aligned action toward them. Instead of checking her bank balance compulsively, she chose specific times for financial review. Instead of taking on clients from desperation, she learned to trust that saying no to poor fits would create space for better opportunities. Most importantly, Sarah began to see money as energy that wanted to flow rather than a limited resource to be hoarded. She started giving more generously, not from guilt or social pressure, but from genuine appreciation for abundance in her life. She began investing in her own growth and well-being, trusting that this would multiply rather than diminish her resources. The results reflected the paradoxical nature of Wu Wei. As Sarah relaxed her desperate grip on money, more began flowing into her life. Better clients appeared, drawn by her centered energy rather than her anxious marketing. Unexpected income streams opened up. Expenses seemed to naturally decrease as she made choices from clarity rather than compulsion. This principle doesn't mean being financially irresponsible or expecting money to magically appear without effort. Rather, it means approaching financial decisions from trust rather than fear, from abundance consciousness rather than scarcity thinking, from long-term wisdom rather than short-term panic. Practically, this might look like creating a budget that includes both security and generosity. It could mean investing in experiences and growth opportunities rather than accumulating possessions out of anxiety. It might involve having honest conversations about money with family members instead of avoiding the topic or fighting about it. The deeper teaching here is about trust in your ability to create value, trust in natural cycles of flow and rest, trust in the intelligence of an abundant universe. This doesn't mean being naive about practical realities, but rather approaching those realities from a place of centered confidence rather than anxious grasping. Take a moment to examine your current relationship with money. Do you approach financial decisions from love or fear? Do you see money as energy to be circulated or as security to be hoarded? What would it feel like to make your next money decision from complete trust in your ability to create value and provide for yourself? The practice I offer you is this: for the next week, before making any financial decision, whether spending, saving, or earning, pause and ask yourself, am I making this choice from fear or from love? From scarcity or abundance? From grasping or from trust? Notice what shifts when you align your money decisions with Wu Wei principles. Creativity, when inspiration meets the fertile void. Perhaps nowhere is the futility of forcing more apparent than in the realm of creativity. You cannot muscle your way to inspiration, cannot schedule breakthrough ideas, cannot demand that beauty emerge from your efforts. Yet our culture often treats creativity as another form of productivity, another area where more effort should equal better results. I have watched artists, writers, musicians, and innovators torture themselves trying to squeeze inspiration from reluctant minds, sitting for hours staring at blank canvases or pages, pushing and pushing until both creator and creation are exhausted. But I have also witnessed the magic that happens when someone learns to court creativity rather than command it, to create space for inspiration rather than demand its appearance. True creativity operates more like courtship than conquest. It requires patience, receptivity, and trust in natural timing. It asks you to prepare the ground and then wait for the seeds to sprout in their own season. Consider James, a novelist who had struggled for 2 years with what he called the book that wouldn't come. He had forced himself to write every morning, often producing pages that felt stilted and lifeless. He analyzed successful books, tried different writing techniques, and pushed through resistance with discipline and determination. The harder he worked, the more elusive his creative flow became. James's breakthrough came when he learned what I call creative Wu Wei, the art of creating optimal conditions for inspiration while releasing attachment to when and how it appears. Instead of forcing daily writing sessions, he began taking long walks without agenda, simply allowing his mind to wander. Instead of trying to think his way to plot solutions, he learned to pose questions to his subconscious and then patiently wait for answers to emerge. He started treating his creativity like a shy animal that needed to be courted rather than captured. He created a beautiful writing space and then spent time there without expecting to produce anything, just reading, dreaming, or sitting quietly. He filled his life with experiences that nourished his artistic soul: concerts, art galleries, conversations with interesting people, time in nature. The transformation was remarkable. Ideas began appearing during his walks, in dreams, in the shower, anywhere except during his forced writing sessions. Characters came alive when he stopped trying to control them. Plot solutions emerged elegantly when he relaxed his analytical grip. The book that had been struggling to be born suddenly began flowing through him rather than being extracted from him. This approach to creativity honors what I call the fertile void, those seemingly unproductive periods that are actually essential for creative gestation. Just as soil needs to lie fallow between growing seasons, your creative spirit needs periods of apparent inactivity to regenerate and prepare for new birth. In practical terms, creative wu-wei might involve setting aside specific times for what appears to be non-productive activity: daydreaming, doodling, playing, wandering. It could mean learning to recognize your natural creative rhythms instead of forcing productivity during low-energy periods. It might involve surrounding yourself with beauty and inspiration rather than focusing only on output and deadlines. The key insight is that creativity is a natural function, like breathing or digesting. You don't make these things happen through willpower, you create conditions that support their natural operation. Similarly, you cannot force inspiration, but you can certainly cultivate an inner and outer environment where creativity flourishes. This principle applies whether you consider yourself a professional artist or simply want more creativity in your daily life. The same receptive awareness that helps a painter access inspiration can help a parent find creative solutions to family challenges or help a business owner innovate new approaches to old problems. Reflect on your relationship with your own creative potential. Do you approach new ideas and inspiration with demand or with invitation? Do you create space for creative gestation, or do you expect immediate results from every creative effort? What would it feel like to trust your natural creative intelligence rather than forcing it to perform on command? The practice I offer you is to identify one area where you'd like more creativity, whether in art, problem-solving, or daily life, and spend 1 week courting rather than commanding it. Create beautiful conditions, ask inspiring questions, expose yourself to new experiences, and then practice patient receptivity to whatever wants to emerge. Health, the body's wise intelligence. Your body carries within it millions of years of evolutionary wisdom. Every cell knows how to repair itself, every organ system knows how to maintain balance, every immune response represents intelligence far beyond conscious understanding. Yet somehow we have learned to approach our physical well-being as another arena for control and force, another problem to be solved through willpower and aggressive intervention. I watch people wage war against their bodies, forcing exercise they hate, restricting foods with rigid discipline, ignoring symptoms until they become crises, treating their physical form as an enemy to be conquered rather than a wise ally to be heard. This approach creates suffering even when it produces short-term results. There is another way, one that honors both medical wisdom and the profound intelligence that animates your flesh and bones. Wu-wei in relation to your body means learning to cooperate with natural healing processes rather than constantly overriding them, to listen to physical wisdom rather than drowning it out with shoulds and shouldn'ts. Consider Linda, a woman who had spent decades fighting her body's natural rhythms and needs. She exercised obsessively despite chronic fatigue, followed strict diets that left her feeling deprived and rebellious, and took medications to suppress symptoms without addressing underlying imbalances. Her approach to health was military, discipline, control, and victory over physical limitations. The irony was that this approach kept her trapped in cycles of brief improvement followed by worse symptoms. Her rigid exercise schedule didn't account for natural energy fluctuations, often leaving her more depleted than strengthened. Her restrictive diets led to binge cycles that made her feel like a failure. Her symptom suppression strategy meant that underlying issues never got addressed, just pushed deeper underground. Linda's transformation began when she learned to treat her body as a wise teacher rather than a rebellious student. Instead of forcing exercise during low-energy periods, she began honoring her natural rhythms, moving vigorously when energy was high, practicing gentle movement when energy was low, and resting completely when rest was needed. Instead of following external diet rules, she began listening to her body's actual needs and responses to different foods. She discovered that her afternoon sugar cravings often meant she needed more protein at lunch, that her digestive issues improved when she ate in a relaxed state rather than rushed, and that her energy was more stable when she honored natural hunger and fullness cues. Most importantly, Linda learned to see symptoms as information rather than enemies. Instead of immediately suppressing a headache, she would pause and ask what her body might be trying to communicate: need for water, rest, stress relief, or emotional processing. Instead of fighting insomnia with force, she began creating conditions that naturally supported sleep and exploring what emotional or mental patterns might be keeping her alert. This approach required patience and trust. Unlike quick fixes that override natural processes, working with the body's wisdom often involves longer timelines and subtler changes. But the results were profound. Linda's energy stabilized at a higher baseline. Her relationship with food became peaceful and nourishing. Her sleep improved naturally as she addressed underlying stressors rather than just medicating symptoms. This doesn't mean abandoning medical care or professional guidance. Rather, it means approaching health as a collaboration between conscious choice and natural wisdom, between medical intervention when necessary and lifestyle practices that support natural healing processes. Wu Wei in health might look like eating when hungry and stopping when satisfied rather than following rigid meal schedules. It could mean exercising in ways that feel nourishing rather than punishing. It might involve addressing stress and emotional patterns that manifest as physical symptoms rather than just treating the body as separate from mind and spirit. The deeper principle here is trust in your body's capacity for healing and balance when given proper conditions. This doesn't mean ignoring serious health concerns or avoiding medical treatment, but rather approaching your physical well-being as a partnership with natural intelligence rather than a battle against physical limitations. Consider your current approach to health and well-being. Do you listen to your body's wisdom or override its signals? Do you cooperate with natural healing processes or try to force health through willpower alone? What would it feel like to treat your body as a wise ally rather than a problem to be solved? The practice I invite you to explore is this: for 1 week, before making any health-related decision, what to eat, when to exercise, how to respond to symptoms, pause and listen to your body's actual needs in that moment. Notice the difference between what you think you should do and what your body is actually asking for. Practice honoring natural rhythms while still maintaining healthy boundaries and seeking appropriate care when needed. Parenting, educating like a gardener. If you are blessed with children in your life, whether as parent, grandparent, teacher, or guide, you have been given perhaps the most profound opportunity to practice Wu Wei. Children are natural teachers of presence, spontaneity, and authentic expression. Yet our culture has convinced many adults that raising children requires constant control, correction, and molding, as if a child were raw clay to be shaped rather than a seed containing its own perfect blueprint for growth. I have observed that the parents and teachers who inspire the most beautiful growth in children are those who learn to guide like gardeners rather than control like sculptors. A gardener doesn't force a rosebud to become a sunflower, doesn't demand that spring growth happen in winter, doesn't try to control every variable in the garden. Instead, a gardener provides optimal conditions, good soil, adequate water, appropriate light, and then trusts in the profound intelligence within each seed. Consider Maria, a mother who had been exhausting herself trying to manage every aspect of her 8-year-old son's development. She scheduled his time meticulously, corrected his behavior constantly, and worried obsessively about whether he was meeting all the appropriate developmental milestones. Her days were filled with battles over homework, arguments about bedtime, and power struggles over everything from clothing choices to friendship decisions. Maria's good intentions were creating exactly the opposite of what she hoped for. Her son was becoming increasingly resistant, rebellious, and disconnected from his own natural curiosity and joy. The more she pushed, the more he pulled away. The more she controlled, the more he found ways to assert his autonomy through defiance. The transformation began when Maria learned what I call spacious boundaries, creating clear, loving limits while allowing freedom within those containers. Instead of micromanaging homework, she established a consistent time and place for it, then allowed her son to discover his own relationship with responsibility. Instead of controlling his friendship choices, she offered guidance when asked and trusted his ability to learn from social experiences. Most importantly, Maria began seeing her role as creating conditions for her son's natural development rather than forcing that development according to her timeline and preferences. She started paying attention to his natural rhythms, interests, and learning style instead of comparing him to external standards or other children. The changes were remarkable. When her son felt trusted rather than controlled, he began taking more natural responsibility for his choices. When he felt heard rather than constantly corrected, he became more willing to listen to guidance. When he felt accepted for who he was rather than who he should become, he relaxed into his authentic self and began expressing his natural gifts more freely. This approach to parenting requires tremendous trust in a child's innate wisdom, trust in natural developmental processes, trust that love and clear boundaries create better results than control and coercion. It doesn't mean being permissive or abandoning guidance, but rather offering structure within which natural growth can flourish. Wu-wei parenting might look like allowing children to experience natural consequences rather than rescuing them from every difficulty. It could mean asking curious questions rather than giving constant advice. It might involve modeling the behavior you hope to see rather than demanding it through rules and punishments. The deeper teaching here is about seeing children as whole beings with their own connection to natural wisdom rather than empty vessels to be filled with adult knowledge and preferences. This doesn't mean children don't need guidance, boundaries, and teaching. It means offering these gifts in ways that honor rather than override their developing autonomy and natural intelligence. This principle applies whether you're parenting toddlers or teenagers, whether you're a teacher in a classroom or a mentor in any capacity. The same spacious love that allows a small child to develop confidence allows an adolescent to make mistakes and learn from them, allows a student to discover their own relationship with learning rather than performing for external approval. If children are part of your life, consider your current approach to guiding their growth. Do you try to control their development or create conditions for natural unfolding? Do you trust their innate wisdom or constantly override it with adult agendas? What would it feel like to parent or teach like a master gardener, attentive, caring, but trusting in natural processes? The practice I offer you is this: identify one area where you might be over-controlling a child's experience, and experiment with creating clear boundaries while allowing more freedom within those containers. Notice what happens when you guide with spacious love rather than anxious control, when you trust a child's capacity for growth rather than trying to manage every detail of their development. As we conclude this exploration of Wu-wei in daily life, take a moment to breathe deeply and notice what resonates most strongly in your heart. Perhaps it's the invitation to love without grasping in your relationships, or the possibility of working with passion but without desperate attachment to outcomes. Maybe it's the idea of treating your body as a wise ally or approaching your creative spirit with courtship rather than demand. These are not mere concepts to understand intellectually, they are invitations to live differently, to experiment with release where you have been grasping, to try trust where you have been controlling. The beautiful truth is that you don't have to transform everything at once. Wu-wei itself suggests starting gently, choosing one area for experimentation, allowing change to unfold naturally rather than forcing wholesale life transformation. As you move forward from here, remember that learning Wu-wei is itself a practice of Wu-wei. It cannot be mastered through force or urgency, but only through patient, compassionate experimentation with new ways of being. Trust the process, trust your own wisdom, and most of all, trust that life itself is conspiring to support your growth in ways both seen and unseen. In the gentleness of this moment, what feels ready to be released? What aspect of your daily life is calling for a more flowing, trusting approach? Listen with your whole being, and let that listening guide your next steps on this pathless path toward greater harmony with the Tao that flows through all things. Daily practices. The morning I first discovered that profound transformation could emerge from the simplest gestures, I was sitting by a mountain stream, watching water move around stones with effortless precision. No struggle, no resistance, just perfect response to what was present. That stream became my first teacher in what I now share with you. Practices so gentle they barely feel like practices, yet so powerful they reshape the very fabric of how we move through our days. You see, dear friend, we've been taught that spiritual practice requires discipline, effort, and often a good measure of struggle against our lower nature. But what if I told you that the deepest practices are those that feel like coming home to yourself? What if the most transformative moments arise not from forcing change, but from creating space for change to unfold naturally? In my years of exploring the pathless path of Wu Wei, I've discovered that daily practice need not be another burden added to your already full life. Instead, it becomes a series of gentle returns, moments when you remember to breathe with the rhythm of the Tao, to move with the current rather than against it. These practices are invitations, not obligations. They're designed to weave seamlessly into your existing rhythm, like morning light that gradually illuminates a room without effort or announcement. The non-meditation meditation. Let me share with you the practice that changed everything for me, what I call the non-meditation meditation. Traditional meditation often becomes another form of doing, another achievement to master. We sit with determination, fight our thoughts, and measure our progress by how still our minds become. But what if meditation could be as natural as a cat stretching in sunlight? Find yourself in any position that feels naturally comfortable, sitting in your favorite chair, lying on your bed, or even standing by a window. Close your eyes softly, like you're greeting sleep, not forcing it. Now, instead of trying to empty your mind or control your breath, simply notice what's already happening without your effort. Feel the weight of your body being supported by the earth. Notice how your heart beats without your permission, how your breath flows without your management. This is the essence of non-meditation, becoming aware of the vast intelligence that operates through you without your conscious effort. You're not trying to achieve any particular state. You're simply resting in the recognition that life is already living itself through you with remarkable wisdom. When thoughts arise, and they will, like clouds moving across the sky, you don't fight them or follow them. You notice them the way you might notice birds flying overhead during a walk. Interesting, temporary, but not requiring your management. Some days your mind will be like a gentle stream, other days like a rushing river. Both are perfect expressions of this moment's weather. Practice this for just 5 to 10 minutes each morning, and you'll begin to notice something remarkable. This quality of relaxed awareness starts appearing naturally throughout your day. You'll find yourself pausing before reacting, breathing deeply before difficult conversations, or simply noticing beauty that was always present but previously invisible to your busy mind. Reflection moments. When during your day do you feel most naturally at peace, requiring no effort to be yourself? What would change in your daily experience if you trusted that consciousness is already awake within you, needing only gentle acknowledgement rather than forceful cultivation? How might your relationships transform if you brought this quality of relaxed presence to your interactions? Practice. Tomorrow morning, before checking your phone or beginning your usual routine, spend 5 minutes in non-meditation. Sit comfortably and simply notice what life is already doing through you without your effort. Notice your heartbeat, your breath, the feeling of being alive. Don't try to change anything, just appreciate the miracle of consciousness that requires no effort from you to exist. The river's breath. Breath is the most intimate teacher we have, always present, always willing to show us the way of natural rhythm. Yet most of us breathe as if we're in a constant state of emergency, shallow and tight, preparing for battles that exist more in our minds than in reality. The river's breath teaches us a different way, to breathe as if we have all the time in the world, which, in this present moment, we do. I learned this practice during a particularly stressful period when every day felt like swimming upstream against an invisible current. Deadlines pressed, relationships strained, and that familiar tightness in my chest seemed to be my constant companion. It was then that I remembered the river by my childhood home, how it breathed with the seasons, full and rushing in spring, gentle and steady in summer, each breath perfect for its time. The river's breath is breathtakingly simple. Place one hand on your heart and one on your belly. Begin breathing in a way that moves both hands, allowing your breath to fill not just your lungs but your entire torso. Imagine your breath as water flowing into a deep, wide lake rather than air rushing into a narrow tube. As you inhale, imagine you're drawing in not just air, but life force itself, the same energy that moves rivers, grows flowers, and guides planets in their orbits. Feel this energy filling every cell, every space within you. As you exhale, imagine you're releasing not just carbon dioxide, but all the tension, all the resistance, all the ways you've been swimming against your natural current. The magic happens in the pause between breaths, that natural space where nothing needs to happen. Don't rush to fill it. Rest there for just a moment, experiencing the profound peace that exists between inhalation and exhalation. This pause is where Wu Wei lives, in the space between effort and rest, between doing and being. I practice the river's breath throughout the day, especially during transitions, before phone calls, walking between rooms, or whenever I notice my shoulders creeping toward my ears. 3 conscious river breaths can shift my entire energetic state, transforming anxiety into centeredness, frustration into curiosity, exhaustion into gentle alertness. Reflection moments. How does your breathing pattern change when you're stressed, and what might your breath be trying to tell you in those moments? What would become possible in challenging conversations if you remembered to breathe like a river, deep, natural, unhurried? Practice. Set 3 gentle reminders in your phone today. When they chime, wherever you are, take 3 river breaths. Notice how this simple practice creates islands of peace in your day, moments where you remember that you have time, that life is spacious, that you can respond rather than react. The contemplative walk. Walking, I've discovered, is meditation in motion. But I'm not speaking of the hurried stride from car to office, or the purposeful march toward a destination. I'm speaking of walking as a conversation with the world around you, a moving meditation that requires no special location, no particular weather, no perfect timing. The contemplative walk began for me on a day when sitting still felt impossible. My mind was like a storm, thoughts crashing into each other with exhausting intensity. I stepped outside with no destination in mind, and something in me began to settle as soon as my feet found their natural rhythm. I realized that sometimes the body leads the spirit home, and walking can be the gentlest way to let that happen. Begin by stepping outside, your backyard, a neighborhood street, or even walking indoors if necessary. The location matters less than your intention to walk not towards something, but with something, with awareness, with gratitude, with the simple pleasure of being a moving part of the living world. Let your first few steps be conscious greetings to the earth. Feel the solid support beneath your feet, the way each step is an act of trust that the ground will meet you. Allow your walking pace to find its own natural rhythm rather than imposing a speed. Some days you'll walk briskly, others slowly, let your body's wisdom guide the tempo. As you walk, practice what I call soft focus. Instead of looking at your phone or letting your mind plan the day ahead, gently broaden your awareness to include what's around you. Notice the quality of light, the temperature on your skin, the sounds that create the soundtrack of this moment. If you pass trees, acknowledge them as the ancient beings they are. If you encounter people, offer a silent blessing for their journey. This isn't about forcing gratitude or manufacturing spiritual experiences. It's about allowing your natural capacity for wonder to resurface, the way plants naturally turn towards sunlight when obstacles are removed. You're not trying to solve problems or achieve insights, you're simply practicing presence in motion. I've found that solutions to persistent challenges often arise during contemplative walks, not because I'm trying to figure things out, but because I've created space for deeper wisdom to surface. The rhythm of walking seems to naturally align with the rhythm of creative thinking, allowing new perspectives to emerge without force. Reflection moments. When you walk with full presence, what do you notice about your neighborhood, your city, or your natural surroundings that you usually miss? How might your daily concerns look different when viewed from the perspective of a contemplative walker rather than a problem-solving mind? What would change in your week if you had one 20-minute conversation with the world around you through contemplative walking? Practice. Choose one walk you take regularly, perhaps from your car to your workplace, or around your neighborhood in the evening. Tomorrow, transform this ordinary walk into a contemplative practice. Walk at whatever pace feels natural, broaden your awareness to include your surroundings, and treat the journey as a moving meditation. Notice how this simple shift in attention affects both the walk and your state of mind afterward. The sacred pause. In the space between stimulus and response lies our freedom, our power, our humanity. Yet most of us live as if we're pinball balls, bouncing from one reaction to the next without ever touching the spaciousness that exists in every present moment. The sacred pause is perhaps the most revolutionary practice I can offer you, not because it's complex, but because it's so simple it can transform your life instantly, if you remember to use it. I discovered the sacred pause during a heated argument with a dear friend. Words were escalating, emotions were spiraling, and I felt the familiar rush of adrenaline that precedes saying something I would later regret. But in that moment, for reasons I still don't fully understand, I paused. Not dramatically, not obviously, just a single breath where I chose not to speak the words that were racing toward my tongue. In that pause, something extraordinary happened. I suddenly saw the situation from my friend's perspective. I felt the pain beneath their anger, the fear beneath their accusation. The words I spoke next came from a completely different place, not from my wounded ego, but from the part of me that genuinely cared about our relationship. That conversation became a deepening rather than a destruction. The sacred pause can be as brief as a single conscious breath, but its effects ripple through your entire day. Before responding to a challenging email, pause. Before reacting to your child's difficult behavior, pause. Before making that impulsive purchase or eating that food you'll regret, pause. In that pause, you're not trying to make the right decision, you're simply creating space for wisdom to emerge. During the pause, you might place your hand on your heart and ask, what wants to emerge through me in this moment? You might take one conscious breath and notice what you're feeling beneath the surface reaction. You might simply look up at the sky and remember that this moment is part of a much larger story than your immediate emotional response. The sacred pause is not about suppressing your authentic responses, it's about ensuring that your responses truly are authentic rather than automatic. It's the difference between reacting from old patterns and responding from present moment awareness. I practice the sacred pause dozens of times each day now, and it has become one of my most treasured allies. Before getting out of bed in the morning, I pause and set an intention for the day. Before eating, I pause and feel gratitude for the nourishment. Before sleep, I pause and release the day's accumulations. These micro-practices weave together into a life lived with greater intentionality and less regret. Reflection moments. In what situations do you most often react automatically rather than responding consciously? What might change in your closest relationships if you consistently paused before responding to emotional triggers? Practice. Today, experiment with 3 sacred pauses. Choose 3 regular activities, perhaps before checking email, before speaking in a tense moment, and before eating lunch. In each pause, take one conscious breath and ask yourself, what wants to emerge through me right now? Notice how this tiny space creates room for choice rather than compulsion. Deep listening. We live in a world of constant noise, external noise from our devices and environments, but perhaps more significantly, internal noise from our own minds constantly commenting, judging, planning, and worrying. In this cacophony, we've largely lost the art of deep listening, which is perhaps the most intimate way to commune with the Tao that expresses itself through everything around us. Deep listening is different from ordinary hearing the way a river is different from a puddle, same element, entirely different depth and movement. When we listen deeply, we're not just receiving sound waves, we're opening ourselves to the intelligence that moves through all life, the wisdom that speaks through rustling leaves, crying children, frustrated partners, and our own beating hearts. I learned deep listening from my grandmother, though she never called it that. When I would visit her as a young person, bursting with stories and problems and enthusiastic plans, she would give me her complete attention. Not just her ears, but her entire presence. I could feel the quality of her listening, spacious, non-judgmental, genuinely curious about my experience. In her presence, I found myself saying things I didn't even know I was thinking, discovering truths that emerged only in the safety of being truly heard. To practice deep listening with others, begin by releasing your agenda for the conversation. Instead of formulating responses or solutions while the other person speaks, practice what I call empty cup listening, becoming genuinely curious about their experience rather than comparing it to your own. Listen not just to their words, but to the emotions beneath the words, the needs behind the emotions, the deeper truth they may be reaching toward but haven't yet found language for. This quality of listening is a gift that costs you nothing but offers immeasurable value to both you and the speaker. When people feel truly heard, they naturally drop into deeper authenticity. Solutions often emerge organically from conversations where at least one person is listening with their whole being rather than just their analytical mind. But deep listening extends far beyond human conversation. Practice listening to your body with the same quality of attention, not just when it's shouting through pain or exhaustion, but in its subtle communications throughout the day. Your body is constantly offering wisdom about what nourishes you, what depletes you, when to rest, when to move, what foods serve you, what environments support your well-being. Listen also to the environments you inhabit. Each place has its own quality of energy, its own gifts and challenges. The corner coffee shop speaks differently than the quiet park, your bedroom offers different medicine than your kitchen. When you listen deeply to places, you begin to choose your environments more consciously, surrounding yourself with spaces that support the person you're becoming rather than the person you've always been. Perhaps most importantly, practice deep listening to the quiet voice of your own intuition. Beneath the mental chatter, beneath the voices of conditioning and expectation, there's a subtle knowing that always speaks truth. This voice rarely shouts, it whispers, suggests, invites. It communicates through sudden knowing, through unexplained attractions or aversions, through dreams and synchronicities, through the feeling of rightness that needs no justification. Reflection moments. Who in your life has offered you the gift of deep listening, and how did that experience affect you? What might you discover if you listen to your body's communications with the same attention you give to important conversations? What is your intuition trying to tell you that your busy mind might be drowning out? Practice. Choose one conversation today where you practice deep listening. Put away all distractions, make eye contact, and listen not just to words but to the full human being before you. Notice what emerges in the space of such attention, both in them and in you. Then, before sleep tonight, spend 5 minutes in deep listening to your own body, asking what it needs and genuinely waiting for the answer. The release ritual. Each day, we accumulate more than just experiences, we gather tensions, worries, disappointments, and the energetic residue of interactions and environments. Without a conscious practice of release, these accumulations build like sediment in a river, eventually blocking the natural flow of our life force. The release ritual is our daily return to clarity, our evening practice of composting what no longer serves us. I developed this practice during a period when I was carrying everyone else's problems as if they were my own. By evening, I felt like a sponge that had absorbed the emotional weather of everyone I'd encountered throughout the day. Sleep became elusive, dreams became chaotic, and I woke each morning feeling as if I hadn't truly rested. The release ritual changed this pattern completely. The beauty of this practice lies in its flexibility. It can be as simple as a conscious exhale or as elaborate as a full ceremonial bath, depending on what your day has required and what your evening allows. The essential element is the conscious intention to release what you've been carrying that was never yours to carry. Begin by creating a simple transition between your day and your evening. This might be changing clothes mindfully, washing your hands with full attention, or simply sitting quietly for a few moments. As you do this, acknowledge internally that you're shifting from doing mode to being mode, from the day's accumulations to the evening's release. Place your hands on your heart and take several deep breaths, allowing yourself to feel whatever you're feeling without trying to change it. You might be tired, frustrated, excited, sad, or some complex mixture of emotions. All of this is welcome. You're not trying to fix anything, just acknowledging what's present. Now, visualize or simply intend to release anything you picked up during the day that doesn't belong to you. This might be someone else's anxiety from a tense meeting, worry about problems you cannot solve, or the energetic residue from crowded or chaotic environments. Imagine these accumulations as dust that you're gently brushing off your clothes, or as weights that you're setting down with gratitude for the strength that carried them. You can enhance this release through physical gestures, literally brushing off your arms and torso, shaking your hands and feet, or taking a shower while imagining the water washing away everything that isn't essentially you. Some evenings, I write worries on small pieces of paper and burn them safely in a metal bowl, watching my concerns transform into smoke and disappear into the larger sky. The release ritual is also a practice of forgiveness, forgiving yourself for moments when you reacted rather than responded, forgiving others for their human imperfections, forgiving the day itself for not matching your expectations. This forgiveness isn't about condoning harmful behavior, it's about freeing yourself from carrying resentments that only poison your own peace. End your release ritual by setting a gentle intention for sleep, perhaps asking for dreams that serve your highest good, or simply expressing gratitude for the day's gifts, however small they might seem. This positive conclusion helps ensure that you enter sleep from a place of peace rather than preoccupation. Reflection moments. What do you typically carry into your evening and sleep that might not be yours to carry? How might your sleep quality and morning energy change if you consistently practice conscious release before bed? Practice. Tonight, create your first release ritual. It need only take 5 to 10 minutes. Change into comfortable clothes mindfully, place your hands on your heart, breathe deeply, and consciously release anything from today that feels heavy or not truly yours. End by expressing gratitude for one thing that went well today, however small. Notice how this practice affects your sleep and tomorrow's energy. Tending the inner garden. Your inner landscape is like a garden, it grows whatever you plant, water, and tend with your attention. Most of us have inherited gardens full of weeds planted by other people's opinions, past traumas, cultural conditioning, and our own unconscious thoughts. But you, dear friend, are the gardener of your inner world, and with gentle daily tending, you can cultivate thoughts and emotions that nourish rather than deplete your life force. This practice emerged from a time when I noticed that my mind had become like a neighborhood I wouldn't want to walk through alone at night, full of criticism, worry, and harsh judgments that created a constant undercurrent of tension in my life. I realized that I had been as careless with my inner environment as someone who throws trash in their own backyard. Tending the inner garden doesn't mean forcing positive thoughts or suppressing difficult emotions. That would be like trying to grow roses by painting weeds red. Instead, it's about becoming a wise gardener who understands the difference between thoughts that deserve cultivation and thoughts that are better composted into wisdom. Each morning, as you wake, notice the first thoughts that arise. Are they worries about the day ahead? Criticisms of how you slept or how you look? Or are they gentler, gratitude for rest, curiosity about what the day might bring, appreciation for the simple fact of being alive? You're not trying to control these thoughts, just becoming aware of the mental seeds you're watering with your attention. Throughout the day, practice what I call conscious weeding, gently redirecting your attention when you notice your mind creating unnecessary suffering. If you catch yourself in a familiar spiral of self-criticism, pause and ask, is this thought helping me grow into the person I want to become? If the answer is no, you can acknowledge the thought without feeding it, then consciously choose to water something more nourishing. This might be as simple as shifting your attention from what's wrong with your current situation to one thing that's going well. Or moving from judgment of another person to curiosity about what pain might be driving their behavior. You're not forcing positivity, you're making conscious choices about where to direct the precious resource of your attention. The most powerful garden tool I've discovered is the practice of speaking to yourself as you would to a beloved friend. Notice how often your inner voice uses words and tones you would never use with someone you care about. What would change if you brought the same kindness to your inner dialogue that you offer to others in their struggles? Evening is an especially fertile time for inner gardening. Before sleep, reflect gently on the day, not to judge your performance, but to water the seeds of wisdom. What did you learn? How did you grow? What are you grateful for? What would you do differently if given another chance, not from self-criticism but from love of your own evolution? Reflection moments. If your inner dialogue had a visible form, what kind of environment would it create around you? What would become possible in your life if you treated your own consciousness with the same care you give to something precious? Which thoughts and emotions in your inner garden deserve more attention, and which ones might be ready for gentle composting? Practice. Tomorrow, experiment with speaking to yourself as you would to your dearest friend. When you notice self-criticism arising, pause and ask, how would I say this to someone I love? then offer yourself that same tone and kindness. Notice how this shift in inner dialogue affects your energy, your choices, and your entire experience of being alive. These practices, dear friend, are not destinations but companions for the journey. They're designed to be woven into your life like threads of gold through ordinary fabric, subtly transforming the whole without requiring you to abandon the life you're already living. Some days you'll remember these practices easily, feeling their support like a gentle current carrying you through your day. Other days you'll forget completely, caught up in the intensity of life's demands. Both are perfect. The path of Wu Wei includes embracing our human forgetfulness with the same compassion we offer our remembering. The goal isn't perfection but direction, a gentle, consistent turning toward presence, toward trust, toward the deep knowing that you are already part of something much larger and wiser than your individual efforts. Each time you remember to breathe consciously, to listen deeply, to pause before reacting, or to tend your inner garden with kindness, you're not just changing your own experience, you're contributing to the collective awakening of our species. Start where you are, use what calls to you, and trust that even the smallest gestures of consciousness create ripples that extend far beyond what you can see. The Tao that moves through you is the same Tao that moves through everything. When you align with it through these gentle practices, you become an agent of harmony in a world that desperately needs more people who remember how to flow with life rather than fight against it. Your practice begins now, with your next breath, with your next choice to respond rather than react, with your next moment of remembering that you are not separate from the wisdom that creates galaxies and grows flowers with equal effortlessness. Trust this, and let your life become a living expression of the way that is always available, always present, always inviting you home to yourself. Parables and Case Studies. As the morning mist settles over the valley, I find myself drawn to share with you the stories that have witnessed the profound transformation possible when one embraces the way of Wu Wei. These are not mere anecdotes, but living testimonies of what unfolds when human beings remember their natural rhythm and stop swimming against the current of life. In my years of observing the dance between effort and effortlessness, I have witnessed countless souls discover that their greatest achievements emerged not from forcing doors open, but from learning to walk through the ones that open naturally. Each story I share with you carries within it a seed of possibility, a gentle reminder that what you seek may already be seeking you. The executive who stopped chasing clients. Let me tell you about Michael, a marketing consultant whose story embodies the paradox of abundance through non-grasping. When I first encountered his tale, he was working 16-hour days, crafting elaborate proposals, chasing every lead with the intensity of a hunter pursuing elusive prey. His office walls were covered with vision boards and aggressive sales targets, yet his bank account remained as barren as winter earth. Michael had fallen into what I call the more effort trap, the modern delusion that intensity alone produces results. Each rejected proposal drove him to create even more elaborate presentations. Each lost client pushed him to pursue 10 more with greater desperation. Like a man trying to catch his own shadow, the harder he chased, the more elusive success became. The transformation began with a simple question that emerged during a moment of exhaustion: what if I stopped chasing and started attracting? This inquiry arose not from his analytical mind, but from a deeper place, the place where wisdom whispers when we finally become quiet enough to listen. Instead of continuing his relentless pursuit, Michael began to practice what I call magnetic presence. He shifted his energy from taking to giving, from convincing to serving. Rather than crafting proposals designed to capture clients, he started creating content that genuinely helped people, expecting nothing in return. He began showing up to networking events not to collect business cards, but to listen deeply to what others truly needed. The change was subtle but profound. Where once he entered rooms with the hungry energy of someone needing something, he now carried the calm presence of someone who had something valuable to offer. His conversations transformed from sales pitches into genuine exchanges of wisdom and support. Within 3 months, something remarkable occurred. Clients began approaching him. Referrals started flowing like water finding its natural course. The proposals he did right required less effort yet carried more weight because they emerged from authentic understanding rather than desperate positioning. Michael discovered what ancient sages have always known: when we stop grasping, life often places in our hands exactly what we need. His business doubled that year, but more importantly, his days became filled with work that nourished rather than depleted him. He had learned to fish in harmony with the current rather than against it. The mother who learned to trust the river. Sarah's story illuminates how Wu Wei transforms not just our relationship with achievement, but with the most sacred of human connections, the bond between parent and child. When I first learned of her journey, she was what modern society calls a helicopter parent, hovering anxiously over her teenage daughter Emma's every move, trying to engineer perfect outcomes through constant intervention. Every homework assignment became a battle. Every social situation required her strategic input. Sarah's love was fierce and genuine, but it manifested as control disguised as care. She scheduled Emma's days with the precision of a military operation, believing that more structure would create more success. Yet the harder she tried to sculpt her daughter into her vision of perfection, the more Emma withdrew, becoming increasingly rebellious and distant. The breaking point came during a screaming match over college applications. Emma, tears streaming down her face, shouted words that pierced Sarah's heart. "You don't trust me to be capable of anything." In that moment of raw truth, Sarah saw herself clearly, not as the loving guide she intended to be, but as a force of constant correction and anxiety. That night, alone in her kitchen as rain drummed gently against the windows, Sarah asked herself a question that would change everything. What would happen if I trusted my daughter's natural wisdom? The question scared her because it required releasing the illusion that her constant intervention was keeping Emma safe and successful. Sarah began practicing what I call spacious love, love that holds rather than controls, that supports rather than directs. Instead of immediately offering solutions to Emma's problems, she learned to ask, "What do you think might work?" When Emma made choices Sarah wouldn't have made, she practiced breathing deeply and trusting that even mistakes could be teachers. The transformation wasn't immediate. Both mother and daughter had to unlearn years of choreographed interaction. But gradually, something beautiful emerged. Emma began seeking her mother's counsel voluntarily. Their conversations deepened from logistics and corrections to dreams and fears. Emma's confidence blossomed as she discovered her own capacity to navigate challenges. Most remarkably, Emma's academic performance actually improved when freed from her mother's anxious oversight. She developed her own relationship with responsibility, one that was internally motivated rather than externally imposed. Sarah learned that her daughter didn't need a manager, she needed a loving witness to her own unfolding. This story reveals one of Wu Wei's most profound teachings. Sometimes our greatest gift to others is our trust in their inherent wisdom. Love expressed through control often achieves the opposite of its intention, while love expressed through spacious presence creates the safety within which others can discover their own strength. The artist who stopped forcing inspiration. Marcus was a composer whose relationship with creativity embodied everything our culture teaches us about achievement, that inspiration could be summoned through willpower, that breakthrough moments could be scheduled, that artistic genius was simply a matter of applying enough pressure to the creative process. His studio was a monument to forced creativity, whiteboards covered with musical theories, schedules blocking out composition time, and elaborate systems for generating ideas. He would sit at his piano for hours, muscles tense with concentration, trying to wrestle melodies from an increasingly resistant muse. Each song felt labored, each composition a victory of persistence over natural flow. The music he produced during this period was technically competent but emotionally hollow. Critics praised his skill while noting a certain mechanical quality to his work. Marcus felt this emptiness keenly. He was creating music, but music wasn't creating itself through him. He had become a manufacturer of sounds rather than a channel for the deeper harmonies that move the human soul. The shift began during a period of enforced rest when a wrist injury made playing impossible. Frustrated and anxious about lost productive time, Marcus initially fought against this interruption. But as days passed without the pressure to create, something unexpected happened. He began hearing music everywhere, in the rhythm of rain on his roof, in the conversations of birds outside his window, in the subtle symphony of his own breathing. For the first time in years, Marcus simply listened without trying to capture or improve what he heard. He walked in parks without his notebook. He sat in cafes without analyzing the background music. He allowed silence to exist without immediately trying to fill it with sound. When he finally returned to his piano, his hands moved with a fluidity that surprised him. Melodies emerged that seemed to play themselves, harmonies that felt discovered rather than constructed. The music that flowed through him during this period carried an emotional depth and natural beauty that years of forced composition had never achieved. Marcus learned what ancient artists have always known: creativity is not something we do, but something we allow. The artist's highest skill is not in manufacturing inspiration, but in becoming so transparent and receptive that the universal creative force can express itself through their unique instrument. His most celebrated compositions came during periods when he practiced what he called creative surrender, showing up at his piano without agenda, allowing his hands to find their way to keys his mind had never planned to press. He discovered that inspiration, like water, flows most freely through vessels that offer no resistance. The CEO who discovered magnetic leadership. Jennifer's transformation from commanding executive to magnetic leader illustrates how Wu-Wei principles can revolutionize even the most results-driven environments. As CEO of a mid-sized technology company, she had built her reputation on decisive action and unwavering control. Her leadership style was that of a skilled conductor trying to control every note in an increasingly complex symphony. Board meetings were performances of her strategic prowess. Employee interactions were opportunities to demonstrate her superior knowledge and decision-making ability. Jennifer believed that leadership meant having all the answers and ensuring every process moved according to her vision. Her days were filled with micromanaging, correcting, and pushing her team toward her version of excellence. While the company was profitable, Jennifer sensed something was missing. Innovation had stagnated. Employees seemed disengaged despite competitive salaries and benefits. Meetings felt more like interrogations than collaborative explorations. The energy in her office building was dense with unspoken tension and careful compliance rather than inspired creativity. The catalyst for change came during a particularly difficult quarter when several key employees resigned within a single month. Their exit interviews revealed a common theme: they felt undervalued, unheard, and reduced to executors of someone else's vision. One departing team leader's words struck particularly deep: "Working here feels like being a very well-paid puppet." That evening, as Jennifer walked alone through her company's empty offices, she found herself wondering what kind of leader she would follow. The honest answer unsettled her: she wouldn't want to work for someone like herself. This recognition created a crack in her certainty, through which new possibilities could enter. Jennifer began experimenting with what she called leadership through space, creating room for others' wisdom rather than filling every moment with her own ideas. In meetings, she practiced asking questions instead of providing answers. She began inviting input before sharing her perspectives. Most challengingly, she learned to sit with not knowing instead of immediately jumping to solutions. The change felt vulnerable and sometimes terrifying. Her identity had been built on being the person with answers, and now she was discovering the power of being the person with better questions. Some decisions took longer, but they emerged from genuine team wisdom rather than executive decree. Gradually, something remarkable happened. Employee engagement scores began climbing. Innovation projects multiplied as team members felt safe to share previously unspoken ideas. The company's culture shifted from careful compliance to creative collaboration. Productivity increased even as Jennifer's direct control decreased. Jennifer discovered that true leadership is less about having power over others and more about creating conditions where others can access their own power. She learned that the most magnetic leaders are not those who demand attention, but those who give it, fully, generously, and without agenda. The Ancient Farmer's Modern Lesson. Allow me to share with you one of the most beloved stories from our tradition, one that continues to illuminate the folly of premature judgment and the wisdom of trusting life's larger intelligence. There was once a farmer whose horse ran away. When his neighbors heard the news, they came to express their sympathy. "Such bad luck," they said sorrowfully. The farmer's response was simply, "Maybe." The next morning the horse returned, bringing with it 3 other wild horses. The neighbors rushed over to celebrate the farmer's good fortune. "How wonderful!" they exclaimed. Again, the farmer replied, maybe. The following day, his son tried to ride one of the wild horses and was thrown, breaking his leg. The neighbors gathered once more, this time to commiserate. "So unfortunate," they said, shaking their heads. The farmer responded as before, "Maybe." Soon after, military officials came through the village, conscripting young men for a war. They passed over the farmer's son because of his broken leg. When the neighbors came to congratulate the farmer on his son's escape from almost certain death, his response remained unchanged, "Maybe." This story, which has guided countless generations, reveals one of Wu Wei's most practical applications, the art of non-reactive presence in the face of life's constant changes. The farmer understood what our anxious minds often forget, that life unfolds according to a larger intelligence that transcends our limited perspective. In our modern context, this wisdom translates into a revolutionary way of meeting both apparent setbacks and obvious victories. When we lose a job, rather than immediately categorizing it as disaster, we might hold the space of maybe, allowing the situation to reveal its deeper purpose. When we receive an unexpected windfall, rather than assuming we know its ultimate meaning, we remain open to whatever wants to emerge. This doesn't mean becoming passive or indifferent. The farmer continued caring for his land, his family, and his animals. But he held his caring lightly, without the added suffering that comes from insisting that life unfold according to his preferences. In your own life, you might experiment with this ancient wisdom. When something occurs that your mind immediately labels as good or bad, pause and whisper maybe. Notice how this single word creates space between you and reactive judgment, space within which wisdom can emerge and appropriate action can arise naturally. Reflection and practice. As these stories settle into your awareness like seeds finding fertile ground, I invite you to pause and notice what resonates most deeply within you. Which character's journey feels most familiar? Which transformation calls to your own soul's longing for greater ease and flow? Consider this: what area of your life currently feels most characterized by forcing and effort? Where are you most tempted to control outcomes rather than trust the process? What might it look like to experiment with just a little more space, a little more allowance, a little more faith in life's inherent intelligence? Perhaps most importantly, what small step toward non-resistance might you take today? Not a dramatic overhaul of your entire approach to living, but a gentle experiment in loosening your grip on one small area where you've been holding too tightly. Remember, the path of Wu Wei is not about sudden transformation but about gradual alignment with what wants to emerge through you. Like water slowly wearing smooth the roughest stone, consistent practice of non-resistance creates profound change through the gentlest means. Take a moment now to breathe deeply and allow these stories to work their quiet magic within you. Feel how each tale carries not just information but transmission, the living energy of what becomes possible when we remember how to flow with rather than against the current of existence. Your own story of transformation is already being written. These examples serve not as prescriptions to follow, but as invitations to discover your own unique expression of effortless effectiveness. Trust that as you walk this path with sincerity and patience, your own tales of Wu Wei mastery will emerge, ready to inspire others who are learning to stop trying so hard and start trusting so deeply. The river of change flows through every life. The question is not whether transformation will come, but whether we will recognize it when it arrives, dressed in the simple clothes of daily practice and wearing the quiet face of gradual awakening. A 30-day program with practice routines. When I watch a river carve its path through stone, I am reminded that the most profound transformations happen not in dramatic bursts, but through gentle, consistent presence. The ancient Chinese had a saying, "The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step." Yet what they understood, and what I wish to share with you now, is that this first step need not be forced or hurried. It can be as natural as breathing, as effortless as dawn breaking over still waters. Over the decades of guiding souls toward the way of Wu Wei, I have learned that the mind craves structure while the spirit yearns for freedom. The 30-day journey I offer you honors both these needs. It is a path with gentle guideposts, not rigid rules, a framework that supports your natural unfolding rather than forcing it into predetermined shapes. As autumn leaves release themselves from branches without struggle, trusting that the wind will carry them exactly where they need to go, so too will you learn to release the tight grip of control and discover the profound power that emerges when we align with life's natural current. Week 1, Awakening of Awareness. The first week is like standing at the edge of a forest you've never entered, feeling both the excitement of discovery and the comfort of familiar ground behind you. This is the time for gentle observation, for becoming curious about the patterns that have shaped your daily experience. Each morning, before the world demands your attention, I invite you to sit quietly for just 5 minutes. Not to meditate in any formal way, but simply to notice. Feel the weight of your body in the chair, the temperature of the air against your skin, the subtle sounds that surround you. In these moments, you are practicing the first principle of Wu Wei, presence without agenda. Throughout your day, carry with you one simple question: where am I forcing? Notice when your jaw tightens as you wait in traffic, when your shoulders rise as you check emails, when your breath becomes shallow during difficult conversations. You are not trying to change anything yet, simply witnessing the places where resistance lives in your body and mind. I remember guiding a young executive through this first week. She discovered she had been holding her breath during every phone call, as if preparing for battle. The simple act of noticing this pattern, without judgment, began to soften something deep within her chest. By week's end, she found herself breathing more naturally, and her colleagues commented on how much more approachable she seemed. In the evenings, spend a few moments reflecting on what you observed. Write down 3 instances where you noticed resistance or forcing. This is not to criticize yourself, but to celebrate your growing awareness. Each moment of recognition is like a small light being turned on in a previously dark room. Take time now to consider, what patterns of forcing have you already begun to notice in your own life? Can you feel the places in your body where tension habitually gathers? What would it be like to approach these patterns with the same gentle curiosity you might show a child learning to walk? For this first week, practice what I call the pause of recognition. When you notice forcing or resistance, simply pause for 3 breaths. Don't try to fix or change anything, just acknowledge what you've observed with the kindness you would show an old friend. Week 2, Releasing the Reins. As the second week dawns, you are no longer a complete stranger to your patterns of resistance. Now comes the delicate art of beginning to let go. This is perhaps the most tender part of our journey together, for letting go touches the deepest fears we carry about safety and control. Start small, as a river starts with a single spring in the mountains. Choose one low-stakes area of your life where you can experiment with releasing control. Perhaps it's allowing someone else to choose the restaurant for lunch, or taking a different route to work without checking the traffic first. These small experiments are like learning to trust the ground beneath your feet. They build confidence in life's ability to support you even when you're not orchestrating every detail. During this week, introduce the practice I call the river breath. When you feel the familiar urge to control or force an outcome, take 3 deep breaths and imagine yourself as water flowing around a stone. The stone, your challenge or frustration, doesn't disappear, but you learn to move around it with grace rather than crashing against it repeatedly. I often think of a mother I once knew who struggled with allowing her teenage daughter to make her own decisions. During this second week of practice, she chose one small area, letting her daughter choose her own clothes for school. The mother's initial anxiety gave way to amazement as she watched her daughter's confidence bloom. I realized I had been solving problems she needed to learn to solve herself, she told me. When I stopped interfering, her wisdom had space to emerge. Practice what I call strategic surrendering this week. Identify 3 specific situations where you typically try to control outcomes, and consciously choose to step back in one of them. Notice what emotions arise: fear, excitement, relief, without judging them. These feelings are natural companions of growth. Create morning moments of intention setting that feel different from goal setting. Instead of declaring what you will make happen, try saying, I am open to what wants to emerge through me today. Feel the difference in your body between these 2 approaches. The first often creates tension, the second invites expansion. As you move through this second week, what are you discovering about the relationship between control and trust? Where do you feel most comfortable releasing the reins, and where does your grip naturally tighten? Can you sense the places where letting go actually increases your effectiveness rather than diminishing it? For your evening practice this week, spend time appreciating the small ways you've experimented with non-control. Celebrate each instance where you chose flow over force, even if the results weren't what your mind expected. You are training yourself to value the process of alignment over the tyranny of predetermined outcomes. Week 3, Flow in Action. By the third week, something has shifted in the soil of your being. You have tasted the sweetness of moving with life rather than against it, and now you are ready to bring this wisdom into the more challenging territories of your daily existence, your important relationships, your meaningful work, your deepest concerns. This is the week to practice what I call compassionate detachment, caring deeply while holding outcomes lightly. Begin applying Wu Wei to one significant challenge in your life. Perhaps it's a difficult colleague, a family conflict, or a creative project that has felt stuck. Instead of approaching it with your usual arsenal of strategies, try approaching it with curiosity and openness to unexpected solutions. Each morning this week, spend 10 minutes in what I call empty cup meditation. Sit quietly and imagine your mind as a cup being emptied of preconceived notions about how your day should unfold. This emptiness is not vacancy but potential, like fertile soil ready to receive whatever seeds the day may plant. During your interactions with others, practice listening like water, allowing their words and emotions to flow through you without immediately forming responses or judgments. You may discover that people feel more heard and are more likely to find their own solutions when you provide this quality of spacious presence. I recall a business owner who, in his third week of practice, was facing a crisis with a major client threatening to leave. Instead of his usual approach of aggressive problem-solving and promises, he chose to listen deeply to the client's concerns without defending or immediately offering solutions. In that spacious listening, the client revealed the real issue, not the surface complaints they had been focusing on, but a deeper need that hadn't been addressed. The relationship not only was saved but deepened significantly. This week, when you encounter resistance or obstacles, practice asking, "What is this situation trying to teach me?" or "How might this challenge be redirecting me towards something better?" These questions transform problems from enemies to be defeated into teachers offering valuable lessons. Introduce movement practices that embody Wu Wei, perhaps gentle yoga, walking meditation, or simply moving your body in ways that feel natural and unforced. Notice how different this feels from exercise that pushes against your body's signals versus movement that honors and celebrates your physical being. What are you learning about the relationship between effort and effectiveness? Can you sense the places where your previous approaches of forcing were actually creating more resistance? How does it feel to bring this gentler approach to situations that really matter to you? End each day this week by acknowledging one way that going with the flow created a better outcome than forcing would have. This practice trains your nervous system to recognize and trust the wisdom of Wu Wei, making it easier to choose this path in the future. Week 4, Emerging Mastery. As you enter the final week of this structured journey, you are no longer the same person who began reading these words. Like a snake that has shed its skin, you have released some of the old patterns that once felt as permanent as mountains. The new skin is tender still, but it is yours, grown from your own experience of what it means to move with life's current rather than against it. This week is about integration and celebration, about weaving the threads of Wu Wei into a way of being that feels both natural and revolutionary. You are learning to live as the Tao itself lives, effortlessly powerful, gently persistent, creating tremendous results through alignment rather than aggression. Practice what I call invisible leadership this week, influencing situations through your quality of presence rather than force of will. Whether you're in formal leadership roles or simply navigating daily interactions, experiment with leading by example, creating space for others' wisdom to emerge, and trusting that your calm-centeredness will naturally invite cooperation and harmony. Begin each morning this week with gratitude for your growing ability to trust life's intelligence. Spend a few moments appreciating how much more easeful many aspects of your life have become. This appreciation isn't self-congratulation but recognition of a natural law. When we align with the Tao, life becomes more fluid and graceful. Deepen your practice of responsive action, learning to distinguish between reactive scrambling and conscious response. When situations arise that would have previously triggered immediate action, pause to sense what kind of response is actually needed. Sometimes the most powerful action is no action, sometimes gentle movement is more effective than dramatic intervention. I think of a teacher who, by her 4th week of practice, completely transformed her classroom dynamics. Instead of trying to control her students' behavior through rules and consequences, she began responding to disruptions with curious attention to what the children might actually need: movement, connection, or simply to be truly seen. Her classroom became a place of natural harmony where learning flowed organically. This week, consciously practice what I call effortless effort, bringing your full presence and skillfulness to tasks while remaining unattached to outcomes. Notice how this paradoxical approach often produces better results with less stress than your old patterns of anxious striving. Begin to see yourself as a gardener of possibility rather than a factory of predetermined results. Trust that when you plant seeds of good intention and tend them with consistent, gentle attention, the right outcomes will naturally emerge, often more beautiful and abundant than anything your limited planning mind could have conceived. As this week unfolds, what has surprised you most about this journey? How has your relationship with challenges and obstacles evolved? Can you feel how your nervous system has learned to default more quickly to calm presence rather than anxious reactivity? Create your own personal Wu Wei practice for beyond these 30 days, a simple, sustainable way of beginning each day that reminds you to move with life rather than against it. This might be a brief morning meditation, a few conscious breaths before important meetings, or an evening practice of releasing the day's tensions and trusting tomorrow's possibilities. Take a moment now to honor the courage it has taken to begin living differently. To choose flow over force goes against much of what our culture teaches about success and achievement. Yet here you are, discovering that there is indeed another way, one that honors both your deepest aspirations and your natural rhythms, creating space for life to work through you in ways that surprise and delight. Your practice of Wu Wei is not ending with this program, it is beginning. Like a river that has found its true course, you are now flowing toward an ocean of possibility that grows larger and more magnificent with each passing day. Integration, commitment, and next steps. As I write these final words to you, my friend, I am reminded of a conversation I once had with a student who asked me, "Master, when will I finally master the way of Wu Wei?" I smiled, watching the morning mist rise from the valley below, and answered, "The day you stop trying to master it." This paradox holds the essence of everything we have explored together. Today, as you reach this moment of transition, you are not graduating from the practice of Wu Wei, you are only now truly beginning. Like a river that never reaches a final destination because it is the destination, the art of non-doing unfolds infinitely, each day offering new depths, new subtleties, new invitations to trust the flow. The journey without end. I have watched countless students over the centuries, and I have noticed something beautiful. Those who embrace Wu Wei with the greatest joy are those who understand that mastery is not about reaching a plateau of perfection, but about falling in love with the continuous dance of learning. Each morning brings fresh opportunities to notice where you are still pushing against the natural current, where you are still trying to control outcomes that belong to the Tao's greater wisdom. Think of a master calligrapher I once knew. After 40 years of practice, he would still approach each character with beginner's mind, allowing the brush to move through him rather than forcing it across the paper. "Every stroke teaches me something new about letting go," he would say, his eyes twinkling with the delight of perpetual discovery. This is the spirit I invite you to carry forward. Your journey with Wu Wei is not a project to complete but a love affair with life's mysterious intelligence. There will be days when you flow like water around obstacles, and days when you catch yourself pushing like wind against a mountain. Both are part of the path. Both are teachers. Let me share something that may surprise you. Even now, after all these years of embodying the Tao, I still discover new ways that subtle resistance creeps into my experience. Just yesterday, I found myself tensing slightly as I waited for rain clouds to gather from my garden. Such a small thing, yet it revealed another layer of trust waiting to be deepened. The path of Wu Wei keeps us humble, curious, and alive to each moment's teaching. Integrating action and non-action. Perhaps the most frequent question I receive from sincere practitioners is this: how do I know when to act and when to wait? How do I balance doing with non-doing? This question reveals a beautiful misunderstanding that I want to gently correct. Wu Wei does not mean alternating between action and inaction like switching between hot and cold water. Rather, it means discovering the quality of consciousness that infuses all your movements, whether you are signing a contract, preparing dinner, or sitting in meditation. It is not what you do, but how you are while doing it. Imagine a master archer. She does not alternate between trying and not trying to hit the target. Instead, she cultivates a state of relaxed focus that remains consistent whether she is drawing the bow or releasing the arrow. Her action springs from stillness. Her stillness contains the potential for perfect action. This is the integration you are learning. In your daily life, this might look like approaching a difficult conversation with your spouse from a centered place rather than from a need to win or control. It might mean pursuing a business opportunity with clear intention but holding the outcome lightly, like a bird that can rest in your open palm but will fly away if you close your fingers. It might mean parenting your children with both guidance and space, like tending a garden where you provide nutrients and protection but trust the seeds to grow according to their own inner blueprint. The integration happens naturally as you deepen in practice. You will find that your actions become more effective precisely because they arise from non-resistance. Your rest becomes more refreshing because it is not an escape from life but a return to your source. The boundary between doing and being dissolves into a seamless flow of appropriate response. Creating your community of practice. One of the most nurturing things you can do for your Wu Wei practice is to surround yourself with others who understand and value this way of being. I do not mean you must find a formal Taoist temple, though you are welcome to if it calls to you. Rather, seek out souls who recognize the wisdom of gentleness, who appreciate the power of listening, who choose cooperation over competition whenever possible. You might find such people in unexpected places: the neighbor who tends her garden with patient love, the coworker who somehow manages conflict with grace, the friend who listens deeply without rushing to give advice. These are your natural allies in the practice of Wu Wei, even if they have never heard the term. Consider creating or joining gatherings where the pace is slow enough for wisdom to emerge. Perhaps a monthly walk in nature where conversation flows organically, or a book club that explores not just ideas but how to live them. Maybe a meditation group, a gardening circle, or simply regular coffee meetings with friends who value depth over drama. I have found that Wu Wei practitioners tend to recognize each other by a certain quality of presence: unhurried, attentive, comfortable with silence, quick to laugh but slow to judge. Trust your intuition about who supports your highest self and who drains your energy through unnecessary complexity or conflict. Remember too that your own presence becomes a gift to others as you deepen in this practice. You need not preach or teach; simply embodying Wu Wei in your daily interactions plants seeds in ways you may never know. The mother who stops yelling at her children because she witnesses your patience, the colleague who tries a gentler approach after experiencing your non-resistant leadership, these ripple effects are how wisdom spreads through the world. Wu Wei in the world. This brings us to a beautiful truth: your personal practice of Wu Wei is never only personal. Every moment you choose flow over force, trust over control, presence over reactivity, you are contributing to the healing of our world. Consider how much of the suffering on our planet comes from the same energy you have been learning to transform in yourself: the need to dominate rather than collaborate, to take rather than receive, to impose rather than invite. As you embody a different way of being, you become living proof that another way is possible. I do not ask you to become a missionary for Wu Wei. The Tao needs no evangelists. Rather, I invite you to trust that your authentic presence, rooted in the natural order, will inspire others simply by its genuineness. Be the person who brings calm to heated meetings, who listens before speaking, who seeks understanding before being understood. Be the one who remembers that every human being, like every flower in the field, is trying to bloom according to their nature. Your Wu Wei practice might lead you to make different choices about how you spend your time and energy. You might find yourself drawn to work that feels aligned rather than merely profitable, to relationships that nourish rather than drain, to activities that connect you with life's beauty rather than distract you from it. These choices, made from inner wisdom rather than external pressure, become your contribution to manifesting the Tao in our world. The gentle commitment. Now I invite you to make a commitment, but not the kind of rigid vow that adds pressure to your spirit. Instead, Offer yourself the gift of what I call a gentle commitment, one that honors both your sincere intention and your human imperfection. Place your hand on your heart and feel its steady rhythm. This is the kind of commitment I invite, organic, sustainable, arising from love rather than obligation. You might say something like, I commit to remembering that I am part of the great flow of life. I commit to noticing when I am swimming against the current and gently returning to trust. I commit to practicing Wu Wei not as another burden but as a return to my natural state. I commit to being patient with myself as I learn, knowing that every moment offers a fresh opportunity to begin again. Write your own version if you like, using words that resonate with your heart. Keep it simple, keep it kind, keep it alive to the mystery of who you are becoming. And here is the secret of sustainable practice: recommit gently each day. Not because you failed the day before, but because commitment is like breath, it needs to be renewed continuously to stay alive. Some mornings you will wake up eager to flow with life's currents. Other mornings you will wake up wanting to control everything. Both are perfect opportunities to practice. Resources for deepening. As you continue this pathless path, you may wish for additional companions and resources. Let me offer a few suggestions, like trail markers for fellow travelers. Return often to the source texts, especially the Tao Te Ching, but read them with fresh eyes each time. The same verse that meant little to you 6 months ago may now illuminate your entire week. Ancient wisdom has a way of revealing new layers as we grow. Spend time in nature regularly, not as escape from life but as remembrance of what natural flow looks like. Watch how water moves around stones, how trees bend without breaking in wind, how birds fly in formation without a leader. These are your teachers in Wu Wei. Consider practices that integrate body and spirit, Tai Chi, Qigong, yoga, or simply mindful walking. The body often understands Wu Wei before the mind does. Let it teach you about moving from center, about yielding that increases strength, about stillness that contains all motion. Find ways to serve others that feel natural to your gifts. Service is one of the most direct paths to experiencing Wu Wei, because it requires us to move beyond personal agenda and align with what wants to emerge for the greater good. The last breath, that is the first breath. And so, my dear friend, we come to the end that is also a beginning. These words I have shared with you are like seeds carried on the wind. They will take root in your life in ways neither of us can predict. Trust their organic unfolding. As I complete this writing, the sun is setting behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. I am reminded once again that the most profound beauty comes not from force but from surrender. The sun does not strain to set magnificently, it simply allows the earth to turn. This is my final invitation to you: live like the sun, like the mountains, like the endless sky. Do what is yours to do with wholehearted presence, then rest in the knowledge that you are held by something infinitely larger and wiser than your personal will. Take a deep breath now. Feel how the air comes to you without any effort on your part. Feel how your body knows exactly what to do with this gift. This breath you are taking right now, it is both the completion of our journey together and the first breath of your life as a practitioner of the ancient art of Wu Wei. Pause for reflection. Where in your life do you feel most ready to trust the natural flow? What would change if you approached your greatest challenge with the same effortlessness as breathing? How might your presence serve the healing of our world? Practice. Each morning this week, before getting out of bed, take 3 conscious breaths and set a gentle intention to notice opportunities for Wu Wei throughout your day. Each evening, acknowledge yourself for any moments when you remembered to flow rather than force. Let this simple practice carry you forward into the pathless path of the Tao. Go well, dear friend. The way is made by walking, and you are already walking it beautifully.